Generally, I'm known for my animation. Or, I guess I'm not known for my animation. But that takes too much time and work. So I'm gonna expand and make other stuff while I work on animations. And I also animate for college, so... As a human being, I enjoy things. Some things I happen to enjoy more than other things. That's what this series is going to be about. I'll be covering the things that I think have very few issues. Anything that I think is practically perfect. See, that's where the name comes from. This will probably be mostly video games because I'm just some freaking nerd who has no life and should just... But I could talk about a range of things. There's a certain TV show that was one of the inspirations for this series. But I'm not talking about that right now. I remember whenever someone would ask me what my favorite indie game was, I would actually have to think about it. Not since I played Shovel Knight. Wow, some guy praising Shovel Knight in a YouTube video. Yeah, this isn't exactly original, but I don't care. Shovel Knight is a masterpiece. You play as a blue guy and you dig dirt and you jump and you bounce and you fly and you phase and look, it's really good, right? Okay, let me go back a bit. Shovel Knight was a Kickstarter project back in 2013 that raised over $300,000. It was made to be a callback to the classic 8-bit NES platformers. Wow, never heard that one before. Yeah, but, you know, this one is actually good. In Shovel Knight, you play as Shovel Knight, who is on a quest to stop the Order of No Quarter and defeat the evil Enchantress. He's plagued by the Shield Knight, his friend whom he lost. The story is really simple, but really charming and enjoyable, which is helped by the great characters and writing. It's funny, but it doesn't rely on outdated references or internet jokes. It's just funny. Many games like this use nostalgia to make it seem like they're better than they actually are. It's used like a crutch. Shovel Knight uses nostalgia a bit differently. Instead of trying to replicate the feeling of an old game, it replicates the feeling of multiple games. Zelda 2, Mario 3, DuckTales, Castlevania, I mean, just look at it. I'm sure that at some point you'll be reminded of an old NES classic. Okay, I'm not smart enough to talk about this. Just go watch this video by Mark Brown, it's much better than this video. Seriously, just go watch that instead.
Instead of trying to copy a specific game from yesteryear, Shovel Knight borrows liberally from the entire NES catalogue to make a game that's reminiscent of 8-bit games in general. And that's smart, because when you're trying to evoke the memories of one game or one series, you're not only trying to compete with the actual game, but also people's nostalgic memories of that game.
Why are you still here? Okay, whatever, I'll continue. Shovel Knight controls perfectly. It controls exactly the way you want it to. The graphics, such good pixel art. It looks just like old games did, and it's beautiful. And oh man, the soundtrack, composed by the legend Jake Kaufman, and yeah, it's amazing. It looks great, sounds great, plays great, and that's all complemented by the fantastic level design. Like, seriously, this game basically has every good kind of design there is. Obstacles are always introduced first in a safe space, it teaches you how to play in a natural way, and okay, look, this is something else you can find all over YouTube. Just search game design Shovel Knight and you get like a million results. So I'm just going to talk about one of my favorite parts to show what I mean. So about halfway through the Lost City level, you get to this room and you immediately fall into this green stuff. You can't avoid it and you end up bouncing off of it. So you immediately know that this is safe and you'll use this to progress. Further into the room, you see this little green blob on the ground. Barely can't reach the platform with your normal jump, so you jump on the blob and voila, you bounce off. So now you know you can use the blobs as trampolines. This next section we fall next to some enemies, so instinctively you start to swing your shovel, and this teaches two things to you. One, that you can push the blobs, and two, the blobs can affect other objects. And boom, in like a minute you were taught how the level works and you don't even realize it. Not that it's much of a surprise that this game is so well made. I mean, it's made by a team who used to work at WayForward. They seem to know their stuff. But yeah, Shovel Knight is great and well made. I'm far from the first person to say that. Everyone was talking about this game when it came out. Everyone was playing it. Unfortunately, the DLC expansions don't get talked about as much. Plague of Shadows and Specter of Torment are just as good as the original game. Some have even said that they're better. They released much later, so they missed out when Shovel Knight was a big talking point. And this isn't even the last of it either. There's a King Knight campaign in the works, and they're also making a 4-player brawling mode. Each expansion is practically a full new game. It has its own story, its own gameplay, its own characters. It's packed full of new content. Plague of Shadows was the first expansion. It takes place at the same time of Shovel Knight. In it, you play as Plague Knight, who is trying to create the ultimate potion to impress the girl he likes and to become the ultimate alchemist. Each Order of No Quarter Knight has an essence for the potion, so you have to go and take it from them. The levels are very similar to the ones that you play in Shovel Knight, although changed in order to fit Plague Knight's playstyle. You see, Plague Knight plays very differently. He's not as fast as Shovel Knight, his jump is much smaller, but he can double jump. Instead of bouncing around on a shovel, he tosses bombs, which can be customized by different parts that you can buy. He doesn't have as much control as Shovel Knight, and he slides around when you land. Most of the platforming is less relying on perfect jumps, and instead requires you to use your arsenal of bombs and the arcane items you collect. It's insane, you kinda just fly around hoping that you can make it to the end of the level. And that's great, because it's crazy and silly, and that's what Plague Knight is. The gameplay is a great encapsulation of what the character is, which further adds to his personalization. In Specter of Torment, the next expansion release, you play as Specter Knight. This is a prequel taking place before Shovel Knight and Plague of Shadows. You work for the Enchantress, and you have to gather the members of the Order of No Quarter to work for her. Along the way, you are reminded of your dark past. Again, in this expansion, it gives Specter Knight a new backstory, which makes him very interesting. And since it's a prequel, we get to see the world in a new way. It's a lot of fun to experience the characters and see their relationship before the Shovel of Hope campaign. Specter Knight controls a bit more traditionally than Plague Knight, but he still is unique to play. He goes back to only having one jump, but he has the ability to run up certain walls. His attack is a very basic swing, but in the air you slash diagonally through objects and enemies. This allows for even more kinds of platforming. And this time the levels are completely different. They're almost unrecognizable, and each level has new remixed music. It blew my mind how much work went into these levels, and they're just as well designed as the Shovel Knight levels. So yeah, the expansions are amazing and add practically new games worth of content. And that's not just bonus content, these are completely new games. It's by far some of the best DLC a game has to offer. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention something pretty important. All of the expansions and additional content is free. You just have to buy the base game for $25 and you get 4 games with amazingly well-designed full content. I feel as if I'm scamming Yacht Club Games or something. And then there's the multiplayer brawler mode that's coming. Like what? When No Man's Sky was announced to be $60, there was a big uproar about how it's an indie game that costs the same as AAA games. Now, in my opinion, I think that this should be about the content in the game, not just the price, and I definitely feel more comfortable giving an indie dev $60 than most of the big gaming publishers. Then, No Man's Sky turned out to be a mess, so it screwed up the whole idea of full-priced indie games. But, when this was a discussion, I thought about what indie game I would feel completely comfortable paying for $60. Surprise, surprise, that game was Shovel Knight. So yeah, it's my favorite indie game, it's in general one of my favorite games, and I do think it's practically perfect. Again, I'm not really saying anything unheard of or new, but I really wanted to praise Plague of Shadows and Specter of Torment. They're vastly undermentioned, and that's not to say that people aren't talking about. They're both getting a lot of well-deserved praise, but they're so good they deserve even more. Yacht Club Games said in a blog post that only 6% of the Steam users completed Plague of Shadows. They think that most players forgot about the expansions by the time that they were released, and that's really depressing because those players are really missing out on a lot. Also, the team is composed of 9 people, so yeah, thought that was worth mentioning.
We've got alchemy, girl, you're changing me all night long.